You walk into a hospital, lie down on a bed, and let a doctor inject you into a reversible coma. When you wake up, they hand you a bill. What they don't hand you is an explanation of what just happened, because they don't actually know. This sequence of events plays out roughly 300 million times around the globe every single year. It is one of the most common, highly choreographed routines in modern medicine. Yet the physicians monitoring your vital signs cannot tell you what consciousness actually is. They cannot explain where yours goes when the drugs take hold, and they have no idea what it is that returns when you open your eyes. We have built a massive infrastructure of surgical safety on top of a foundational blind spot. We are coasting on 175 years of practical momentum, successfully operating the machinery without ever reading the manual. Before the fall of 1846, surgery was an exercise in brutality. Patients were strapped to tables, given alcohol to drink, handed leather to bite on. Screaming was simply an expected part of the procedure. Then, inside a Boston medical theater, a dentist named William Morton administered ether to a man with a neck tumor. The surgeons cut. The patient felt absolutely nothing. The room sat in stunned silence. Within months, hospitals across Europe were pouring these chemical liquids into primitive brass inhalers. Surgeons didn't pause to understand the molecular mechanism of ether. They only cared that the agonizing pain had stopped. Watching this unfold, physician Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote that the surgical knife would no longer bring the dread of pain. The practice was instantly locked into standard medicine. The medical community accepted the result and skipped the theory. We discovered a ghost in the machine, and instead of studying it, we simply put it to work. Analytical. This diagram represents the 4 specific clinical targets of general anesthesia: unconsciousness, immobility, analgesia, and amnesia. When anesthesiologists administer a balanced cocktail of drugs, these 4 effects combine to effectively turn the human brain off. But if these chemicals are designed to selectively target human neurology, we run into a glaring biological contradiction. Expose a venous flytrap to ether, and the plant freezes mid-snap. Remove the gas, and it starts hunting again. Administer anesthesia to bacteria or single-celled organisms, and their internal processes grind to a halt. A plant has no brain. Bacteria have no nervous systems. The drugs are not targeting synapses or complex human neurology. They are targeting a baseline mechanism of life, shared by every living thing on Earth. Inside the operating room, monitors track heart rates, blood pressure, and brain waves. But these screens are only measuring the physical exhaust of the body, not the presence of subjective experience. Because the drugs handling pain, memory, and paralysis are administered separately from the drug handling consciousness, the chemical cocktail can occasionally fall out of balance. The paralytic keeps the body completely frozen, but the patient's mind wakes up. This is called anesthesia awareness. It happens to as many as 40,000 people in the United States every year. They endure the full surgical procedure, completely alert, trapped inside a paralyzed shell, unable to even blink. The doctors standing inches away remain oblivious because the vital signs stay steady. We rely on the monitors to keep us safe, but they only track the machinery, leaving us entirely blind to the mind. For decades, scientists assumed the brain was just a biological computer, but physicists like Nobel laureate Roger Penrose argued that classical biology alone couldn't explain the depth of subjective experience. Penrose teamed up with anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff to develop the Orch-Orr theory. They proposed that consciousness doesn't emerge from large-scale neuron firing, but from quantum channels operating at the subatomic level. This animation illustrates microscopic structures inside cells called microtubules. Their theory suggests anesthesia acts as a chemical dampener, physically stopping the delicate quantum vibrations inside these tubes. Recent experiments in 2024 have begun to confirm this exact dampening effect. And because these microtubule structures exist in all complex cells, it perfectly explains why anesthetics work across entirely different branches of life. If this holds true, your mind isn't software running on a meat computer. Consciousness might be a fundamental physical property of the universe, and we accidentally discovered the chemicals that sever our connection to it. When you go to sleep, your brain cycles through active, restorative phases. You dream, you react to loud noises. Anesthesia is an entirely different biological state. The philosopher Thomas Nagel famously asked, "What is it like to be a bat?" The point of his question was to define consciousness. To be conscious means there is a specific feeling of being you, a subjective experience. But if you ask what it is like to be under general anesthesia, the answer is that there is no what it is like. There is no feeling of passing time, no dreams. It is the total, terrifying absence of experience. You step out of existence entirely. It is a state philosophically identical to death, distinguishable only by the fact that a doctor in a pair of scrubs eventually pulls you back. Think about the last time you were asked to count backwards from 10. You hit 8, maybe 7, and the timeline of your life abruptly snaps. While your mind dissolves into an absolute void, the room around you continues. The surgical team operates with confident authority, tracking numbers on a screen, maintaining the illusion of complete control. We have located a universal off switch for the defining feature of human existence. We use it hundreds of millions of times a year, and we still have no idea how it actually works. That is the reality of modern medicine. You are trusting the process, not the understanding.